I see the born of no return. Sister, hey now, can't you see we're rushing for the end? I see the point of no return. Now see the point of no return. It's just ahead.
Well, good evening. It's Monday, October 28th, 2013. My name is Gary Hendershot, and once again, I'm barking at the moon, as if anyone out there really cared. In the news, it's kind of hard to escape the various conundrums associated with what is popularly referred to as Obamacare. I've been ranking on it, for a little while now. Matter of fact, I've been ranking on it for a couple of years, but it just it's like that snowball that starts out small, and by the time it gets down to the bottom of the hill, has turned into an avalanche. Folks are starting to get what could only be described as sticker shock as they see what the real cost of Obamacare is likely to be. What with all the problems associated with the Obamacare website and so on, it's a bit of a puzzle that this didn't come about sooner. But, today I read an article. This is from WashingtonTimes.com. Person named Cheryl Chumley put this article together. And she's talking about folks in California that have come up on this sticker shock scenario. Title of the article is, "I was all for Obamacare until I got the bill." Well, let's take a little trip down memory lane and see what the promises were about what's actually called the Affordable Health Care Act, but we all know it as Obamacare. Let's see what Mr. Obama, for whom this legislation has been named, had to say about it back in the day.
We will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period.
If you like your doctor, you keep your doctor. If you like your current insurance, you keep that insurance.
If you've got health insurance, you like your doctor, you like your plan, you can keep your doctor, you can keep your plan. Nobody is talking about taking that away from you. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you like your health care plan, you can keep your health care plan.
And that same.
Okay, so let me understand this correctly. If I got a doctor, and I kind of like doing business with him, I can keep him. If I've got a plan that satisfies my requirements, I can keep it. Right? Again, back to Cheryl Chumley's article. Several 100,000 Californians in coming weeks may be feeling the same pinch as insurers drop their plans and push them onto exchanges, medical analysis say. Blue Shield of California sent letters to 119,000 residents of California last month, announcing the plans don't meet federal mandates. Kaiser Permanente, meanwhile, is canceling about 160,000 of its customers' plans, about half of its customer base in California. A majority of those are being booted off. A majority of those who are booted off their plans will face a rate increase from Obamacare. Jennifer Harris, Fullerton resident, said she was shocked to receive a letter from her HealthNet Inc. insurer that her plan, which costs $98 a month, was being dropped. The cheapest plan, she said in the Los Angeles Times, that she has found is $238 a month. Middle income earners will see their rates on average rise 30% in California, some experts estimate. Now, does that really surprise you? I mean, let's face it, if you want to get something really screwed up, if you want something to cost many times its relative value, typically you get the government involved in it. With the government now involved in your health care, you can pretty much bet that the delivery of those services will not be done efficiently. They'll be done based on government bureaucratic procedure. The government honestly believes that productivity is measured by how many pieces of paper you move from one pile to another. And you can pretty much bet that there's going to be a lot of government bureaucrats standing between you and your health care with their hand out, expecting a paycheck, now that the government has control over health care. Contrary to Mr. Obama's promises back before we passed the legislation so we could see what's in it, if you've got a doctor you like and he is not in the medical group approved by whatever plan you get on the Obamacare exchange, you will have to find a new doctor. Contrary to what was promised back before we read the bill, if you have an insurance plan that meets your needs, but it does not meet the government-mandated minimums, you can pretty much bet that your plan is going to be eliminated by the insurance carrier who currently offers it. So, if you don't think that Obamacare is going to impact you, you had best guess again. And there is so much money involved in this nightmare that the only thing that's going to stop it is a whole lot of people in the streets saying, hell no, I won't go. So far, we've seen protests. As a matter of fact, I attended a protest back before we passed the bill so that we could see what was in it. There were 2 million people on the streets of D.C. protesting against Obamacare. It was never reported in the news. The people's voice was totally ignored by the politicos. There is just too much money at stake for them to back down. And unfortunately, I suspect they've already spent that money. If you're like a lot of people in the United States, a large portion of your savings is tied up in your home. As you reach retirement age, you kind of figure, well, you know, the kids have moved on. It's just me and the wife now. You know, we don't really need this 5-bedroom monstrosity in the suburbs anymore. Maybe we'll just, move out to the country, get us a little 2-bedroom somewhere, something small, easy to manage, maybe not too much grass to mow, something easy for us to live in our retirement years and shoot with all the equity we've built up in our home over the years. We ought to be able to buy a little place like that out in the country for cash, not have any mortgage, so in our declining years, we ought to be able to live comfortably and, our little shack out in the woods somewhere, live a quiet, comfortable retirement without mortgages and all that kind of stuff to deal with. Have you checked what the current market value of your home is right now? This article was published in shtfplan.com website. I'll leave it to your imagination what SHTF stands for. I'm sure many of you are bright enough to figure that out. A fellow by the name of Mac Slavo put this together on October 28th. His report starts out, last week, the Sacramento Bee published a report indicating the foreclosure rates had returned to normal levels and that the foreclosure crisis that overwhelmed the greater Sacramento area for the past 7 years had ended. Well, that's good news. The Sacramento, California area was one of the hardest hit by the recession and foreclosures, with average home prices declining 50% in some areas. If foreclosure rates were dropping, suggested analysts, it means that home sales must be rising again, right? Seems logical. Except they didn't. According to a report from the National Association of Realtors, home sales plunged significantly in the month of September. So much so that it is the single largest drop in signed home sales in 40 months. There is generally a 1 to 2 month lag between a signed contract and a completed sale. Interesting. This from Zero Hedge on this topic. There are a variety of factors that may be at play here. Officially, the NAR reports that the drop in sales is a result of higher mortgage rates and the government shutdown. That's it. Let's blame it on the government shutdown. Of course, the shutdown didn't happen until the month after the drop, so there's that. Rising mortgage rates certainly play a role, and those rates only declined to begin with because of massive Fed money intervention. In fact, the Federal Reserve has made so much money available that many economists believe the debt party is back. I mean, shoot, there is just so much money out there, you'd think there'd be all kinds of money to lend. We're awash in cash. But the real question is, how can we possibly be in a recovery when millions of Americans remain unemployed, underemployed, and underpaid? The answer is simple. The entire economy right now is a complete sham, and it's being reflected in some rather scary decreases in real estate values. If you decide you want to try and sell your home, you can bet it's going to take longer than usual to find a buyer, and that after you find that buyer, it's going to take longer than usual to actually close the deal. Some homes are remaining on the market for in excess of a year before they have a contract on them. Once a contract is made, it can take a couple of months for all the I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed. Bottom line is, a lot of people who thought their investment in their home would be a fairly liquid investment that would provide a reasonable return after 10, 15, 20 years, in some cases 30 years, are finding out that what that home has really become is an anchor around their neck, and that to make a fast sale, they've had to reduce their expectations for their return significantly. Bottom line, it's not just the folks with the 401ks who've taken a big hit. So many people who are now nearing retirement age and were counting on the equity in their home to provide for a secure retirement are going to be disappointed, myself included. With all the scandals in America, it's almost hard to keep abreast. We could go all the way back to the Kennedy assassination. I guess we could go back further than that. We could go back to, what did Roosevelt really know about Pearl Harbor? Come on, there have always been lies, damned lies, and statistics. The most recent nonsense coming out of the inside the Beltway crowd is this thing with the NSA. It just keeps going on and on and on. Now, yes, I know there's a lot of people out there. What about the IRS problem? What about Benghazi? What about? There are so many issues that we could be hyperventilating about that it's really kind of hard to choose. But if you look at the current news that's being reported, you do kind of have to address the hot issue of the day. And the hot issue of the day is still this NSA spying nonsense. Now, Dianne Feinstein, that some of the pearls of wisdom that come out of that woman's mouth. She was all in favor of NSA spying when they were spying on you and spying on me and spying on every average American. That was perfectly reasonable. And boy, she was backing those boys 100%. Well, what do you think would make Dianne Feinstein change her mind about NSA spying? Oh, well, it's now being reported that the NSA is spying on the uppers. Yes, they're spying on the upper crust. They're spying on foreign leaders. Oh, my goodness. Why, they might even be spying on Dianne Feinstein. So now all of a sudden, now that she's finally figured out that it's not just the saps like me and you that the NSA is recording every phone call, sniffing every email, watching every social network. They're spying on the upper crust. Now she calls into question the veracity, the need for all this spying going on. But I guarantee you, here's how it's going to play out. The NSA is going to get a slap on the hand. They're going to say, oh, naughty, naughty, don't you do that. And the NSA will say, yes, Mommy, we won't do that anymore. And as soon as Mommy turns her back, that kid's going to have his fingers back in the cookie jar. That's how it's really going to play out. Information in the information age is power. And if you got the dirt on a foreign leader, if you got the dirt on a senator, if you got the dirt on a congressman, if you got the dirt on a federal judge, that gives you power. And these people are power mad, power hungry, and now that they got the toys to acquire additional power, if you really think they're going to turn those toys off, you guess again. But this past weekend, there's a bunch of folks raising hell in Washington, D.C. Once again, we had another protest weekend. You know, it's called Don't Spy on Us, with a capital U-S. Now, these are just average folks, okay? These are just average people who are bloody well fed up with a government that has just flat become way too nosy, way too interested in average folks' business. Now, as much as I admire the effort, I fear that such peaceful protests are very easily ignored, because these are, after all, the little people. The people who Dianne Feinstein thinks it's okay to spy on. They're not upper crust. They're not landed gentry. They hold no titles of nobility. And they don't swing through D.C. with envelopes full of Benjamins, passing them out like it was candy on Halloween. So as much as I admire them for standing up and speaking truth to power, I fear they're all too easily ignored. Only time will tell. The financial system of the United States is based purely on trust. Okay? You trust that pretty piece of printed paper with a dead white guy's face on it. You trust that piece of paper to have value. You trade your labors for those pretty pieces of paper with pictures of dead presidents on them, because you're pretty sure that when you take those pieces of paper down to the grocery store or to the gas station or wherever, you'll be able to conduct business with other people who also have faith in those pretty printed pieces of paper with pictures of dead white guys. Well, what would happen if all of a sudden people saw that so-called money for what it was? Just a piece of paper with a picture of a dead white guy on it. What do you think would happen? Well, here recently, there have just been such a flush of these pretty pieces of paper with pictures of dead white guys on that the average value in foreign exchange has been dramatically reduced. When something is plentiful, it's available for cheap. It's only something that is precious and rare that people are willing to pay an extraordinary price for. Most of our manufactured goods, and at this point, an incredible percentage of something as simple as the food we eat, is no longer produced here in the United States. You cannot hardly buy an automobile that was 100% made in the USA. I don't care what nameplate it's got on it. I don't care if it says Ford, Government Motors, Chrysler. I don't care what name it's got on it. There's very little probability you're going to be able to buy an automobile that, from steel to finished product, 100% American made. I dare you to try and find some kind of electronics widget that was made in the United States. I don't care whether you're trying to buy a color TV or a tablet computer or even a wristwatch. Try to find one that's actually made here in the United States. Textiles. You know, we used to make some of the finest textiles in the world. Try to find something made out of cloth that was woven here in the United States. So in this day when so much of what you'd like to have, in some cases, stuff that you need, is produced overseas, what makes it affordable is the favorable exchange for dollars against the local currencies where the products are produced. Let's take China, for example. So much of our manufactured product comes from China nowadays. Seems like when I was growing up, everything, all the low-cost stuff was made in Japan. That was back in the days when Japanese labor was cheap. Nowadays, even the Japanese are outsourcing their manufacturing to the Chinese. Chinese are starting to find out that their labor is starting to get expensive. So, the Chinese are now outsourcing labor to Indonesia and Malaysia and other places where they can get slave labor even cheaper than they can in China. Bottom line is, as long as the dollar is strong, our lifestyle is subsidized by the strength of that dollar. We're able to avoid the dramatic impact of what a lot of people would refer to as hyperinflation, because even though we've overprinted the dollar, even though we've made more dollars available than what should really be out there, the dollar is still precious enough in foreign exchange that we can still get goods for prices that are most people would look at and say are affordable. Part of the reason for that is what's referred to as the petrodollar. The fact that everybody in the world needs to accumulate a certain number of dollars to be able to buy energy resources, specifically oil and natural gas, because the dollar is the accepted medium of exchange by most of the world's oil-producing, energy-producing nations. Well, at least it was. This tidal wave of dollars that have been printed over the last 10 years or so may soon start catching up to average American Joes. The BRICS nations are now actively working on ways to cut Uncle Sugar out of his piece of the action by establishing a basket of currencies for which they will trade their resources, cutting the United States out. Here recently, Saudi Arabia has begun to pull back from its relationship with the United States. The Bretton Woods Accords are now in question. Now, according to an article that was put together by The Independent, written by a fellow named Jesse Hamilton and another guy named Jim Brunsden, the credit crunch might be coming. Okay, now, we saw what happened a few weeks ago when it was even hinted that the willy-nilly printing of dollars might be slowed down a little bit. You know, they were talking, about, backing off this printing. The stock market took a hit, but whoa, just the hint that they might not make huge volumes of additional dollars available in the marketplace caused some problems, caused ripples through the economy. But now, according to Hamilton and Brunsden, the Federal Reserve Liquidity Coverage Ratio proposal, approved unanimously at a meeting in Washington, goes further than the Basel III measure adopted in January and calls for earlier implementation than the European Union. The U.S. plan, most stringent for the biggest banks, is looking at implementation by 2017, 2 years ahead of the European deadline. The proposed rule would, for the first time in the United States, put in place a quantitative liquidity requirement. That's a big word for meaning the banks are actually going to have reserves on hand to back the loans they make. That's scary to a banker. They're accustomed to, they need to make a loan to a good customer. They just create the money out of nothing. Now they've actually got to have hard assets to back those loans? Why, that's un-American. The problem is that at some point or another, this quantitative easing into infinity has got to stop. The banks are being told they need to be in a position to survive a 30-day credit drought. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what they're talking about. Money is going to start getting harder to get. As money becomes harder to get, You can expect your 401k, your stock market investments, and the investment in your home to take a significant hit. That's just how it's going to be. Now, all the big boys have been taken with both hands for about the last 10 years. I mean, they've just been flush in money. And they've already had an opportunity to get most of that money out of the United States into hard assets or into overseas investments where they can protect themselves from any kind of a hit. Average folks like you and I have been pretty much cut off at the knees. I mean, shoot, it's even become difficult at this point to buy a couple $100 widget off of eBay from a seller in China or Hong Kong because it seems PayPal isn't doing international transactions right now for whatever reason. Bottom line is clamps on little guys like you, like me, trying to move money out of the United States. Starting to get difficult. My goodness, if that money got out of the United States, might be harder to grab. Now, there are rumors circulating that something along the lines of what happened to the folks in Cyprus, where, you know, old geezers who'd been saving their entire lives for their retirement, you know, maybe they had a couple $100,000 stashed away to ease them into a comfortable retirement, took a hit, you know, just from out of nowhere. The government came in and said, well, you know, you don't really need that $200,000 anyway. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to give you stock in the bank where you're keeping that money instead of the cash. Yeah, you're just, you know, and we say the stock is worth this much. So, you know, we're going to take X amount of your hard-earned savings and we're going to replace that with stock in the bank, which we value as a fair trade. Maybe. Very similar rules are now being put in play in the European Union. Canada's already got it, and it's being discussed on Capitol Hill here in the United States. So, a new phrase should enter the American lexicon. You've heard of the bailout? All right. Get used to the idea of you financing a bail-in. You may wind up, instead of being a depositor at the bank, you may wind up being a stockholder. Didn't know you as a capitalist, did you? You're now a stockholder in the bank. Is that why you put your money in a savings account? Is that why you bought a CD? So that you could risk that money buying stock in a bank? Is that what you did? Or did you put your money in a savings account or a CD because you thought that money was in some way guaranteed? I'm Gary Hendershot, and I think I've done enough barking at the moon for one night. Hope I got you thinking about those issues, and yeah, we'll see you again next week. Take care now.
Love of the turnarounds. None of us are leaving here alive. Whoa, what will you say? do? What will you do? Oh, I'm calling out to you. Won't you turn around? Oh, I'm calling out to you. Won't you turn around?